one that the slides will be made available on the course Microsoft Teams webpage. We will be sharing the slides with all the students. Recording is up to you. We will not place any recorded videos. If you wanted to record the live session, you can record it. That is, I have no objection. And attendance, we will not take any attendance. It is up to you. And we will not insist also, because this is a special situation and we will not enforce any of these things. But we encourage strongly to attend the classes. Hello.
Yes, Sarati, we can
Hello,
hear
Rashmi,
you.
can you hear?
Yes,
One
Sarati.
minute, 1 minute. I am not able to hear.
I can hear you, Sarati.
Huh?
I can hear you.
Yes. So I hope I have clarified the questions. Will the CS245 examination be objective or subjective? So some of these details we will give you as we go along. So you do not need to really be much more specific in terms of these things right from the day one. Right? Will make these patterns much more clearer as we go along, and then they will be informed to you well in advance. It is not like a surprise element. Once again, somebody is asking that mode of evaluation be MS Teams. As far as yes, it will be through MS Teams only. And once again, I request all the students that we will inform you well before, that there will not be any surprise element, be it with respect to the examination pattern, whether it is objective or subjective or any such kind of things. Will there be any backup exam for students who missed out one exam, sir? So my answer to this question is that as far as possible, you please attend. And since these exams are not asking you to come physically, or they're all at your class timetables, they will be held. And I do not really see any reason why any student will miss these exams. But in case in an extraordinary situation, if a student misses, that is very few cases, very few cases, and that happens in a rare moment, and we will take care of those cases depending on the merit of the case. Students can actually unmute and ask questions as well. I mean, there is no issue, but if you feel comfortable typing these questions are also, I do not have any issue. Can you provide a reference like links to download SQL software? Yes, we'll do that one. It's a MySQL software. I'll actually provide the links that are associated for downloading of the software. But if you are using Ubuntu system, you can use apt-get manager to directly download these MySQL software. Any questions? So perfect. So if you have no further questions, we'll continue with our session. I hope.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Sarati, then I may leave the class then.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, students,
Yes.
then we will meet after Dr. Sarati completes his lectures. After that, I'll take over. Thank you all. Thank you, Sarati.
Thank you. So, having structure of this particular course, both the theory course as well as the lab component, we'll have a little bit introduction about the database management systems. And then in this particular first lecture, I wanted you to pay some attention with respect to the examples. I am not going to open up the theory upfront, right? From this perspective, I wanted to say that the databases are the heart of any of the application system that has to be built, and it's an integral part of our day-to-day life activities today. And sometimes we may not have paid attention while interacting with these database systems. So the examples are that the first I will give you 5 examples, which essentially gives you the glimpse of what the databases are, and then you might actually question me whether these are really the databases. The answer partly is yes and no, but let me just give you the examples. That if you visit the academic section web page, it will list the academic sections list of courses run by the departments department wise. For example, here is a table, even though it's a PDF file, but this PDF file must have been generated from some system. It's not manually prepared, certainly, because this is a very long PDF file. It contains it is a tabular form. The first point to be noted is that this is in a tabular form, well structured, well organized. There are several columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or let's say 10 to 12 columns are there. Fixed set of columns are there. The first point to be noted, columns are always fixed. There is a title for each of this column. The columns are bold in letter. Why am I emphasizing this unnecessary metadata to you? You will be able to understand and correlate as we progress along. And then you will actually feel that the connection between why I am actually expressing, detailing the metadata. The metadata is all about the table, academic section, running course list by department wise, that is the table, and it contains several columns, fixed number of columns, and each column has an heading, and these are the fixed columns, but the number of rows can be varying. That in this particular table, maybe 400 rows are there, 500 rows are there. Every row must have same number of columns. That is the first observation that we can actually understand from this table. There are multiple observations, but I will not go into those detailed observations. Similarly, another example is that list of elective courses from the academic section only. So if you wanted to ask me any question, please unmute yourself and then ask this question, and then immediately mute yourself. Otherwise, since I am in the presentation mode, I will not be able to see your chat messages. That is the only thing. So the list of electives, once again, is in a tabular form. See, the point that I wanted to, important point I want you to pay attention to is that these are all in the tabular forms, each of these things. And here you can see some more details. In that course code is there, and then there are 15 columns you can see as of now, but there might be many more number of rows, 15 rows that you can see in this particular snapshot, but there are many more number of rows to this particular table if you download this file. The point that I wanted to emphasize is that some columns are fixed in their expression, some columns are varying in their expression. Course name, the number of characters are varying from row to row. You can actually observe this one. But whereas course code, there are fixed number of columns are there, and a fixed number of bytes are there, or characters are there. Similarly, class slot, there are slots that are defined, and you cannot have in this particular database, you cannot have some class slot as, let us say, Y. Once again, another tabular form. The list of HSS elective allotments. Once again, fixed number of columns, varying number of rows. But then you might be wondering that is it all about the generated documents like PDFs? Well, the other example is that web pages can also populate tables. The examples are that from the students affairs section, list of foreign students. This is all our IIT Guwahati examples that I am populating so that you can immediately connect to relevance of these examples. Once again, there are several columns but fixed in number. Rows can be varying. Well, is it always about tables? Well, things may not be. So, for example, if you look at these menus in these web pages, they might be themselves as tables. Or here, this menu, you might, if some of you are familiar with PHP scripting kind of thing, you might feel that some of these menu items are populated from the hard coded in the PHP scripts, but it may not be the case always. What if the number of hostels have increased unprecedentedly, that you cannot keep updating your, keep maintaining your source code as and when there are the changes to the hostels? You might feel that, well, the hostels might be fixed in number, and then it is the chance for the changes of the menu might be very little, but it may not be the case. For example, if you look at the e-commerce websites, and if you see these menus may not even be populated by fixed coding. They must be generated from a database, and this database might be associated with some tables. Right? The point that I wanted to emphasize is that the format in which you are actually visualizing may indicate or may not indicate it directly, but they all refers to somewhere or the other the interaction with the databases. Some menus might be populated by hard coding. Some menus may not even be able to be populated. And if you go inside these menus, there will be huge host of menus that actually will come, and menus inside menus inside menus, and they all must be maintained, and then they all must be automatically populated. The point, the underlying point is that some of these things must take help of the databases. Right? That is the point that I want to make. So now the observations on the presented examples are that examples 1 to 4 are all in tabular format. Each table has fixed number of columns, and each table has varying number of rows. Columns within the tables hold values. So if you look at very carefully, every column and of every row or every element of this table must hold some values. That is what is the observation. And some examples are not directly resembles the tables, but they must be from the tables. Somewhere from the tables they must be populated. So these are the observations that we have. The other observation that we can actually also make is that the data that is populated in a cell is one data per one cell. That's exactly the observation that we have. And that is what is all about data. It actually says that the truth of that, what is the data that is being presented. However, there might be some deviations. For example, in this particular case, if you see the last column, the eligibility criteria, it is not one value that essentially is recorded. Right? Eligibility criteria is BTech Chemical Engineering, BTech Civil Engineering 2018 August batch, and so on and so forth. Many details that have been specified. Having said, what typically is emphasized is that the tables must actually have only one value per cell. That is the general observation, and we'll connect to the theory at a later point in time why I am actually emphasizing on this factor. So data, as you might have observed or might not have observed, is in the two forms that are predominantly existing. One is the structured data and another is unstructured data. Accordingly, there are structured databases, there are unstructured databases. We'll see some of these examples of what are the structured databases and what are these unstructured databases. First, we'll take up the structured databases and see what are these examples. But if you ask the question that what differentiate these data, the differentiating factors are that the elements stored in these databases, how the queries are formulated for each of these databases, how the elements are retrieved. They are all completely different. How the elements are updated, how the multiple user engagement is handled, and how volumes are handled in terms of the questions that are posed to the database, and how quality is achieved. All of these things differentiates structured data versus unstructured databases. Well, we'll look at few examples of structured databases, followed by few examples of unstructured databases, and take it up further. Structured databases, you might have interacted a banking application where you have a web-based interface as an application. You are allowed to enter your credentials, username, password, and then the auxiliary information, whether you are a robot or not. Once that is affirmed, the queries that will be posed is that these are all the things that will happen behind the scenes in terms of the applications. But this on the right hand side, the queries that are being asked to the database is what is this, let's say the right hand side of this slide shows what is my bank balance. That is the first maybe query that can be asked to the database. Deposit 10,000 rupees into my account. Withdraw 5,000 rupees from my account. Provide me the last month's bank statement. And you please observe that even though these queries happens to be natural language in presented in natural language, they must be converted into executable statements that database can understand. The other forms of the structured queries are that once again, when I'm actually saying structured, for a specific account, savings account, you please give me these things. That is what is the main point that I want to emphasize. Another example is the airlines reservation systems. These are also databases without which applications cannot manage booking of the customers to specified flights. And you might also have interacted with these databases at some point or the other time. The questions that you might have posed to these databases are that list the flights between Guwahati and Vizag, city X to city Y on a particular specified date. So it will give you the list of flights in a tabular format. You might also query, and each of these things, even though sometimes you might, majority of the times these are all called queries. You actually see some queries are read only and some queries are read write. So for example, if you say list the queries, list the flights, you are reading only the database tables. You read the table and then list the flights which are running between Guwahati and Vizag. But if you say book a ticket for 5 passengers on 6E512, you might wanted to write some information onto not on your computer but on the computer on the servers of the airline systems. That is the main differentiating factor. In first query, you are essentially reading the database. In the second query, you are writing onto someone else's server. And you wanted to pay some money, and this is also a query. And modify travel date from 15th January to 16th January. Once again, this is another format of the query. And these queries, as of now, they're all resembling natural language. Once again, I wanted to emphasize, but they must be translated into an understandable query to the database language. That's the point that I want to emphasize. That the natural language queries, what is my savings bank balance, what is the deposit, please deposit some amount, withdraw amount. Some of these queries must be translated back into the executable form of the database's language. The other example is the railway reservation systems, and then you will actually might be understanding, but the point that I wanted to make, the larger point is that at the end you will understand why I am elaborating these diverse examples. The railway reservation systems you also might have seen. The queries are identical, if not similar, if not identical. List the trains between Guwahati and Vizag. Book a ticket on 2 trains. Train 12345, 2842, 12842. Pay money and then modify the date of travel. Some other, these things, if you very carefully observe, there are very specific forms of query. So you have to select from the menu items and then you essentially fire the query, the natural language query. But here in the e-commerce websites, you say that list the books on the database management systems, buy the book by Raghu Ramakrishnan, pay the money and modify the shipping address. Seems to be very identical or similar format of the queries, but you please pay attention to the query form of the query that you are giving is a natural language query in this e-commerce website. It is no more a structured query like this. So you here, when I say structured query, you have to say, you have to select from which city to which city on which date. You have to select, and then it will be translated into a query. Similarly over here, it is exactly the same thing. And here is also the same thing, that you have to give your user ID, you have to give your password, then it will verify and then give you some information in terms of firing several queries to the database system. But when it comes to the e-commerce websites, the searches are in natural language and the results are once again tabular formats. We'll come to these differentiating factors a little bit, but there are some form of the structured databases that actually are getting managed over here. This is a very traditional example of the university databases, and you all have interacted with this database, if not the other databases. Is that you have a role as a student, you will be validating your role to the database, and then you ask these questions to the database saying that show me my transcript. Show the list of courses in this semester, add an elective, drop an elective and register for this semester. This might be the kind of operation that you might be performing on these databases. Once again, these are all structured, their formats will not actually vary, and most of the time these are all menu driven, and then you have the less scope for making errors to the databases. And you might have interacted with other kinds of databases. For example, the competitive exams like Joint Seat Allocation Authority. I mean, you have, at the time of taking admissions, you might have taken these things. So the kind of queries that you might actually ask to this data is that show me the list of choices, my choices. Select IIT Roorkee 4 years BTech in computer science program. That you will be selecting. Right? Delete some choices, add some choices, confirm the choice, float, and then pay the fee payment. These are the databases that you have interacted with. Once again, these are all structured databases. Right? Passport, once again, the same thing. The identical, similar kind of data. Queries are varying. They have to be translated back to understandable language of the database. Once again, land registrations, you have several kind of queries that you can actually interact. But more and more, as you go along with very complex applications like GST or income tax, these are all structured databases that populates everywhere. Right? Now I'll try to summarize what is the underlying point, why I actually have emphasized on such kind of large amount of examples. One is that in all of these applications, data is stored in tabular formats. Stored data is from the system defined data types. They cannot be more than system defined data types. By that, what I mean is that you can store integers. You can store characters, you can store Boolean value numbers, you can store floating point numbers, you can store the double double formats, double float or double precision numbers, or you can store date and many other predefined system data types that you can store in these tables. Operations are all centered around tables. You can manipulate tables, you can manipulate rows, you can manipulate columns in each of these examples. And all these examples involve multiple users. The volume that differentiates, the scale that differentiates, the integrity of the data that actually differentiates. Right? So that is what is all about this one. So let me just take for a minute and then ask if any student has any question. You can type if you feel comfortable typing the questions. Okay, you can interrupt me by unmuting yourself as I go along. That's not an issue, and you can feel free to interrupt me. That's what is the main thing. So we'll move from the structured data examples to the unstructured data examples, and then you actually see several examples that we can see in our day-to-day activities. Text databases are there, documents are there, images are there, audios are there, videos are there. Source code, this is a very interesting thing. Software binaries, even more inspiring things. Graph databases are there, maps are there, and then biometric, much more complex databases are there. Biometric databases. We'll see some of these examples, and then associated queries also we'll try to see this in these examples. Then you will be able to differentiate what is the difference between structured and unstructured. Text databases, the well-known example is search engines, Google search engine. Google stores web pages, and you will be giving a query will be expressed in the natural language. Even the query is expressed in the natural language, what is being retrieved is documents, the HTML pages, the PDFs, the PPTs. They are not the tables, they are the document that will be retrieved, the HTML pages. And these documents will be retrieved as is. There will not be any modifications. But if you see these, let's say other examples, if you see this one, let us say your well-known example, the academic university example, you will see some columns are curtailed, some rows are curtailed and are presented to you. But over here, in this Google search engine kind of text databases, the HTML web page completely will be retrieved. For example, over here, some web page is retrieved, which means that this complete HTML web page. If a PDF is retrieved, the complete PDF is retrieved for you. It will not be modified, it will not be inserted, it will not be updated. But the interesting thing is that the queries are natural language and they cannot be converted to the system understandable executable formats as we see in the form of, let's say, structured examples. We'll see as we go along. The fundamental difference is that queries are expressed only in natural language. It cannot be expressed in the structured query languages. The another example of the texted databases are your emails, right? Retrieve an email. What are the queries that you can post to this system? Retrieve the emails from the specified data, specified course. Retrieve the emails containing the text. You can search the emails by text. You can compose the emails and then delete the emails. So many operations that you can actually perform. Not only these things, but these are all the predominant use cases. Well, documents also is a database, right? And you might wonder that what are these documents and why they are different from the text kind of, or let's say Google search engine queries, is that some websites, some systems will only store repository of PDF documents. The examples are that journals. The examples are that libraries. The examples are many such kind of applications that are existing. They all store the PDF files, text, HTML files. The queries that are being submitted are structured. Here they are all not natural language. That is what differentiates. And you can actually ask these questions that list all the articles published in March 2018. You can also search saying that list all the articles containing SQL. To a certain extent, you can do search-based queries. You can ask a specific query saying that show the article titled some title. You can also ask this question that give me the article published by the author. So there are several forms of the queries that you can interact with these. Again, they're all converted to structured query languages, but the retrieved information is PDFs. Image databases are there, and if you have interacted with this Flickr database, you will be able to you will be able to understand that there only populates images. And the queries that you can actually ask is that show me the images with IIT Guwahati, which actually has IIT Guwahati. Show me the images containing Serpentine Lake. Show me the images uploaded in the year 2020. Show me the images from the author, uploaded by the author. Many other forms of the queries. Once again, these queries are structured in nature, but natural language query that will be posed to these systems. Audio databases are also right. They're all, once again, the data that is stored is audio. The data stored is image. The data stored is PDF. The data stored is text, and so on and so forth. The queries that are asked are to a certain extent natural language and to a certain extent menu driven. Right. Over here also is the same thing, but the retrieval happens as per the database element that you are actually storing. Over here, the retrieved element will be storing songs. And you all are familiar with these video databases. I do not need to emphasize more on these video databases. So far some of these databases you might have interacted with. Some of the databases that you might have paid attention as a database is what is known as source code. Source code databases are there. And the kind of queries that you can actually perform on these source code databases are that list the changes made to the file on Wednesday, 30th December. You can actually ask such kind of queries. To a certain extent, these are all structured, and the data that is stored is unstructured text. What differentiates source code from the text databases like emails or Google or HTML web pages is that these are source code, but these are, let's say, these not the source code. For example, over here, email is a text document, right? And you might wonder that what differentiates. I can actually view these as a text. No issue, but it is a programming language text element that will be populated in this in these things, and the way the operations that are performed on this database differentiates the text database, email database versus source code. Right? You can actually say that using all these files, please build my application. You can actually say that one, but you cannot say with respect to the emails. Using all these emails, please build my application. You cannot actually say this one. So this query is the data elements that are stored, and then the queries that you are actually firing onto the database differentiates what data you are actually playing with and what elements you are storing. Binaries, much more interesting thing. You all have interacted with them, binary databases, but knowingly or unknowingly, once again. And what are these things that you might have, let's say, how you have performed? So I'll stop over here because it's at the time. If you have any questions, please ask. Otherwise, we'll continue in our next class, tomorrow's class.